The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Mike's Auto Repair, painting everything in warm golden hues. Jake wiped his hands on a greasy rag and glanced at his watch. 5:30. Time to pick up Emma from daycare. He had been working on Mrs. Henderson's old Buick for the better part of the afternoon, but the stubborn transmission refused to cooperate. Jake owned the small repair shop on the outskirts of town, a business he had inherited from his father 3 years ago. It wasn't much, but it provided a steady income for him and his 4-year-old daughter Emma. As Jake gathered his tools, he heard the sound of a car engine sputtering and dying somewhere nearby. He looked up to see a sleek red sedan coasting into his parking lot, coming to a stop near the front entrance. Steam was rising from under the hood, and he could hear the distinct sound of an overheated engine. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a woman in her late 20s. She wore a cream-colored coat that looked expensive, and her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the obvious stress on her face. She stood by her car for a moment, staring at the steam with a mixture of confusion and frustration. Jake set down his toolbox and walked over to her. "Looks like you're having some trouble," he said, his voice gentle and reassuring. The woman looked up at him, relief washing over her features. "I'm Sarah," she said, extending her hand. "And yes, I think my car just gave up on me. I was driving through town when it started making this horrible noise, and then all this steam started coming out." "I'm Jake," he replied, shaking her hand. "Let me take a look." He popped the hood and immediately saw the problem. "Your radiator hose burst," he explained, pointing to the damaged part. "It's not too serious, but you're not going anywhere until it's fixed." Sarah's face fell. "How long will that take? I'm supposed to be at my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner in 2 hours, and it's still a 3-hour drive from here." Jake checked his watch again. "Well, I've got the part in stock, and it's a pretty straightforward repair. Should take about an hour, maybe a little more. But I was just about to close up and get my daughter." "Oh, I don't want to impose," Sarah said quickly. "Maybe I could call a tow truck or something." "On a Friday evening, you'll be waiting until tomorrow morning," Jake said with a sympathetic smile. "Tell you what, let me call my neighbor. She can pick up Emma from daycare, and I'll get your car fixed. You'll still make it to your sister's dinner, just a little later than planned." Sarah's eyes filled with gratitude. "Are you sure? I feel terrible about this." "Don't worry about it. These things happen." Jake pulled out his phone and made a quick call to Mrs. Peterson next door, who was always happy to help with Emma when needed. As Jake began working on the car, Sarah stood nearby, watching him with curiosity. "You're very kind to do this for a complete stranger," she said. "My dad always taught me to help people when they're in trouble," Jake replied, not looking up from his work. "Besides, I know what it's like to have car problems at the worst possible time." They talked easily as Jake worked. Sarah told him about her job as a marketing coordinator in the city, about her sister's wedding, and about how she rarely ventured into small towns like this one. Jake shared stories about growing up here, about taking over his father's business, and about the challenges of raising Emma on his own. "Her mother?" Sarah asked gently. "Left when Emma was 6 months old," Jake said matter-of-factly. "Said small-town life wasn't for her. Emma doesn't remember her, which is probably for the best." Just as Jake was finishing up the repair, he heard the familiar sound of Mrs. Peterson's old Honda pulling into the parking lot. A moment later, 4-year-old Emma came running across the lot, her pigtails bouncing and her backpack trailing behind her. "Daddy," she called out, launching herself into Jake's arms despite his dirty work clothes. "Hey there, sweetheart," Jake said, lifting her up and spinning her around. "How was daycare?" "We made finger paintings, and Tommy Wilson said my dinosaur looked like a chicken, but Miss Janet said it was beautiful," Emma reported seriously. Jake laughed and set her down. "Well, Miss Janet is right. Your dinosaurs are always beautiful." It was then that Emma noticed Sarah standing nearby. The little girl tilted her head and studied the woman with the frank curiosity that only children possess. "Who's that, Daddy?" Emma asked. "This is Sarah," Jake said. "I'm helping fix her car." Emma walked over to Sarah with the fearless confidence of a 4-year-old. "Hi, Sarah, I like your coat. It's pretty like a princess coat." Sarah smiled and crouched down to Emma's level. "Thank you, Emma, that's very sweet of you to say. Are you a princess?" Emma asked seriously. "No, I'm not a princess," Sarah laughed. "But I think your daddy is like a knight, helping people fix their cars." Emma considered this for a moment, then looked back and forth between Sarah and her father. Something seemed to click in her young mind. Daddy, Emma said, tugging on Jake's sleeve. Can she be my mommy? The parking lot fell silent except for the distant sound of traffic on the main road. Jake felt his face turn red, and Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Emma, honey, Jake started, clearly flustered. That's not, you can't just. But Sarah was looking at Emma with a soft expression, not seeming offended or uncomfortable. Instead, she appeared touched by the child's innocent question. That's a very special question, Emma, Sarah said gently. But being someone's mommy is something that happens slowly, over time, when people get to know each other very well and care about each other very much. Emma nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense to her. Do you want to get to know us? She asked. Sarah glanced up at Jake, who was still standing there looking mortified. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of possibilities neither had expected to find on this ordinary Friday evening. I think I would like that very much, Sarah said quietly. Jake finished tightening the last clamp on the radiator hose and lowered the hood. All set, he said, his voice still a bit strained from embarrassment. That should get you to your sister's wedding and back home safely. Sarah stood up and reached for her purse. What do I owe you? Don't worry about it, Jake said, waving off her money. Just glad I could help. I insist, Sarah said. And I want to leave you my card. She pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. That's my personal number. Maybe when I drive back through town tomorrow, I could stop by. Take you and Emma out for ice cream or something. Emma clapped her hands together. Can we, Daddy, please? Jake took the card, his fingers brushing against Sarah's for just a moment. I think we'd like that, he said. As Sarah got into her car and started the engine, which now ran smoothly, Emma waved enthusiastically from the parking lot. Bye, Princess Sarah. See you tomorrow. Sarah rolled down her window. Goodbye, Emma. Goodbye, Jake. Thank you for everything. As the red sedan pulled out of the parking lot and disappeared down the road, Jake looked down at his daughter, who was still waving even though Sarah's car was long gone. Daddy, Emma said, taking his hand. I think she's nice. Yeah, sweetheart, Jake said, smiling as he looked at the business card in his other hand. I think she is too. They walked back toward the shop together, Emma chattering about princesses and ice cream, while Jake found himself thinking about tomorrow, and about the unexpected ways life could change in the space of a single afternoon. Sometimes the most important moments arrived disguised as ordinary problems. Sometimes a broken radiator hose could lead to something beautiful. And sometimes a 4-year-old's innocent question could open doors that adults were too careful to open themselves. Jake locked up the shop, lifted Emma onto his shoulders, and headed home, already looking forward to tomorrow's ice cream.